All right, guys, hope everybody is well. Today I wanted to explore Marshal McLuhan some more, and I'm going to be digging in a bit to his kind of most famous passage that he's known for, his famous quote, which is "The medium is the message." And we're going to be reading a bit from The Medium and the Light, Reflections on Religion. Excellent book. Highly recommend it if you're interested in this material here. And we're going to be reading from a chapter, an essay titled Religion and Youth, Second Conversion, Conversation with Pierre Babin. Pierre Babin is his interlocutor here, and they have a discussion about what the church is going to look like in the age of the electric age. He was writing in the mid 20th century here, and they're talking about what the actual physical church is going to continue, and the message of Jesus be manifested through the church as it was in the Newtonian world, as in the mid to 20th century we were moving into the electric world with the advent of the television, and things were changing rapidly. And this is the context that they were discussing here. The first part is going to be an interesting kind of inquiry into the passages from St. John's Gospel with regards to ideas from McLuhan. And then we're going to dig into the idea of the medium is the message. We're going to have some examples there. So we'll do a little close reading here, and then maybe discuss either in this video or another video some of the implications for the technology that's available to us now in the 21st century here in 2020, and see if we can extrapolate some of the insights from McLuhan here. So first, again, I'm going to start from a passage that's, again, talking within the context of the church in the electric age. And here McLuhan says, in a connected, coherent world, that is Newton's world, communication operated via connections and links. In the electric world, there are no connections, only separate levels that vibrate together or are in disharmony. We have discovered in our time that touch consists of tuning the sense organ to the frequency of the object itself, maintaining a constant interval between the organ and the object. If we want to grasp the object and squeeze it, we are no longer dealing with contact and interval, but with connection. To express their idea of communication, the kids use terms for the electronic and acoustic worlds: to be right on, to be with it, to be in, to catch the right vibes, to turn on and tune in. As you can see, those were kind of 1960s, 70s, phrases. And then it says, and that is the message of St. John's Gospel. Quote, may those who have ears to hear, let them hear, close quote. That is, tune into the right frequency. Most people, however, do not have ears for hearing, but only for listening. To listen is to blinker yourself, to restrict the eyes, as it were. To grasp the way the words arrive, what the speaker is saying. But to hear is to put yourself on the same wavelength as the speaker. Christ himself uses this metaphor. He speaks of listening as opposed to hearing. The scribes were, quote-unquote, listeners. They looked at texts. Quote, it is written, but I say unto you, close quote. But they understood nothing. They had no ears for hearing, but only for listening. The same situation repeats itself today. You may have all of the necessary titles and degrees, but be on the wrong wavelength. Jesus also says, my sheep know my voice. I know my sheep and they recognize my voice. But if you cannot hear me, you are not part of my flock. It's paraphrasing from John 10:27. He repeats several times in the Gospel of John, essentially, quote, most of these people do not belong to my flock. They are on the wrong wavelength. If they hear my voice, it is because the Father has tuned them to the proper frequency. He programmed them for within to hear me. St. John repeats it constantly. The Father has given me certain people who hear me. The others are content just to listen. They don't tune their receivers. They grasp nothing. To them, it's all a great mystery. And here we're going to dig into the medium is the message. So Babin asks, your famous phrase, the medium is the message, can we apply it to the present question? Usually we think that the message is Christ and his gospel, and that the medium is the church. If it is so, how can we say that the medium is the message? And McLuhan responds, let me begin with your first question, which deals directly with the problem of communication. Here I want to use the vocabulary and fundamental ideas of Gestalt psychology. In Gestalt, reality presents itself to the mind as a figure detaching itself from a ground. We notice the figure first, and most often it dominates our whole field of consciousness. However, the ground is at least as important and often is even more important, especially in the areas that concern us. I wasn't aware of Gestalt therapy when I first talked about the medium being the message, and I hadn't yet discovered the significance of the two hemispheres of the brain. Take a simple example. If you speak of the car as a medium, you are no further ahead because the car is no more than a figure, detaching itself from a service environment of expressways, oil companies, automobile assembly lines, etc. The real medium, in the case of the car, is the totality of services it creates, or better yet, the huge change that it creates in the human community. The car as figure is not the message. I think that is a poignant insight there that we can extract and apply to, social media, for example, and understand how I made another video about this, how the actual Facebook post or the Instagram picture or the tweet is less impactful than the way that these communications, these tools of communications, reorient our human consciousness. All right, so I'm going to continue here. For North Americans, the hidden ground, the real message of the car, is what it does with our sense of privacy. The effect is different in Europe, but the car for us has been largely created to ensure our privacy. In other words, the car's message is privacy, intimacy, and solitude. Privacy is made possible by the large network of highways, the biggest architectural structure in the history of the world, which, by contrast, makes the pyramids and the Great Wall of China seem small. The car itself is no more than a figure in this service environment. The same figure ground Gestalt structure applies to the Gutenberg press and all other media. The quote-unquote medium is not simply a figure, and a radio program is only a figure on a service ground. Thus, the program isn't the message. The real message is what we call the secondary or side effect of the medium, not its obvious effects. Side effects are always hidden, like the ground. We are not aware of them. That is also the essence of Gestalt psychology. The figure, the Gestalt, is visible while the ground remains invisible. Human perception encourages us to pay attention to the figure, a painting, and to ignore the ground, its frame, the wall. This is especially true in the West. And here's an interesting point he makes here. The third world has quite a different approach. And then Babin asks again, you spoke of secondary or side effects. How do you explain that they appeared more important than the direct effects when what is at play is the communication of a message? McLuhan responds, you are thinking in terms of efficient cause, like everyone in the Western world since it was foisted on us by Aristotle. Such and such a cause produces such and such an effect. A car transports a man faster than his feet. Radio provides instant information. So in the case of efficient cause, the cause necessarily appears prior to the effect, which is contrary to approaching it from formal cause. Efficient cause depends on the left cerebral hemisphere's concern for an abstract element, which is also what the figure from Gestalt psychology is. Now, in the electric age, at the speed of light, we need to process these things through the right hemisphere, that is, holistically, using formal cause. And just a quick aside here, in the mid-20th century, this idea of the left logical linear brain versus the right holistic imaginatory brain, it was becoming popular there. It still is, but it's more of a functional than a spatial process. So there are two aspects of the brain, and I think it's interesting how McLuhan is juxtaposing these two ways of looking at things with regards to apprehending the broader ground rather than the immediate figure that is available to us, to our consciousness initially and apparently. I think it's important when we think of a lot of the goings-on of our current civilization to really get an understanding of the different networks of relationships that are in the background that are more impactful than what's more relevant and prevalent to us. When we think of something like the coronavirus, right, the actual virus, is less impactful really than the causes and the effects and the environment and the networks of relationships that happen behind the scenes that really need to be understood in order to get a better grasp of what's happening to us in our environment. So, all right, let me continue reading here. So now in the electric age, at the speed of light, we need to process these things through the right hemisphere, that is, holistically using formal cause. And in formal cause, the effects appear before the causes. It is crucial that we use this approach. We need to know in advance what the effects on the users will be before we build the particular medium. Again, this just is highly relevant for the way that social media is built. Right? He's saying here we need to consider the causes, right? And in a formal cause, the effects appear before the causes. It is crucial that we use this approach. We need to know in advance what the effects on the users will be before we build the particular medium. High quality insight there, I think. All right, continue on. Take cancer, for example. Medical science believes that we can get rid of its effects by suppressing its efficient cause. But here is a case where the classic scheme of things no longer works. The cause of cancer resides in the general lifestyle of the person, beyond any particular efficient cause or factor. To cure cancer, we need to examine our total way of life. For example, our taste or habit for certain colors or aromas, which induce us to add chemical ingredients to food, such as food colorings. They are all known to be carcinogenic, but none of them is so directly. We could say that our lifestyle is the underlying cause of cancer, the formal cause, not the food coloring, its efficient cause. In formal cause, the most important effect is this equation, the one proceeding from lifestyle, appears as a secondary or side effect, while medical science concentrates on the obvious effect, the one linked to efficient cause. Here's another example, one closer to our subject. When we are in a frame of mind that draws mostly on the left hemisphere, we instinctively ask, what is the content of the radio program? That's what we think is the message, the direct and obvious effect of the radio, which we believe to be the most important thing. However, the content isn't the message. The real message is all the secondary effects produced by the services and disservices that the medium demands. And these are the social and psychic changes that the medium causes in the lives of its users, the formal cause. If you want to change the effects of radio and eventually protect yourself from them, you shouldn't overly focus on the content, the radio program. The effects have already produced themselves regardless of radio's content. But let's be frank, in the current mental context left-brained, these matters are very difficult to accept. Babin says, you are aware that the church has organizations which concern themselves exclusively with media. For example, the OCIC for cinema and the UNDA for TV and radio. What role would you give these organizations? McLuhan responds, I've already given you the answer. Whether you refer to the media or the church, their leadership is entirely preoccupied with providing the best possible content. However, they miss the really important points. What you print has very little importance. The effects of print are exactly the same whether one prints good or bad books. Babin retorts here, but if I push your idea to its limits, applying it to the church itself, one can conclude that it isn't worth spending a lot of time working on the quote-unquote message. McLuhan responds, isn't the real message of the church in the secondary or side effects of the incarnation? That is to say, in Christ's penetration into all of human existence? Then the question is, where are you in relation to this reality? Most people prefer to avoid the question by sidestepping it. The message is there, but they want no part of it. So they eliminate it by plugging into another channel. They hypnotize themselves with the figure so as to better ignore the ground. They prefer to study the words rather than the questions that Christ asks everywhere and of every human being. I think that Gestalt's figure-ground dichotomy presents us with a useful way of speaking and understanding. The cognitive agent, to speak like Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas, is on the level of the efficient cause, not on that of the formal cause. He concerns himself with the content of Christianity, not with its true message, which consists of being plugged into a person. Generally, when you teach the content of the faith, you seldom go beyond its efficient cause. The formal cause is your manner of being and all the baggage that accompanies your message. As a result, to teach catechism as a given or as content is to limit oneself to only half of Christianity. The formal cause, the ground that is perceived unconsciously, is not words, but that part of the faith which operates in our lives. The two should be united. In Jesus Christ, there is no distance or separation between the medium and the message. It is the one case where we can say that the medium and the message are fully one and the same. Let me give you another example. Look at the following photograph. It is a well-known reproduction from a Chinese photographer. At a time when he was struggling with some religious questions, this man photographed a landscape of melting snow and a cemetery with the black earth appearing here and there. And I will put this picture on the video here. When he developed the negative, he was stupefied to notice the face of Christ, and he converted to Christianity on the spot. Babin responds, "I'm looking at the photograph and I must admit that I see nothing of the sort." And then McLuhan, "I believe that you have looked at the background as though it were the figure, and as a result you saw nothing. So is it with most people when they study a medium. They focus on a medium's program. They grasp only its content. But the vehicle, the entire array of services necessary just to have a program, all of that escapes them. The Oriental, the man from the third world, is better prepared than we to use the proper approach. Think of traditional Chinese painting, which seems to be made up of voids, intervals, and blank spaces, and which for us may have no discernible meaning. This Chinese photographer has thus seen Jesus in his totality." This is from Babin. "This Chinese photographer has thus seen Jesus in his totality as medium and message, and he was transformed because it suddenly struck him, spoke to him from within." And then McLuhan finally here, "That is exactly what I wanted you to notice. To say that the Word became flesh in Jesus Christ is the theological affirmation. It's the figure in the Gestalt sense. But to say that Christ touches all men, beggars, hobos, misfits, is to speak of ground. That is to say, of the multitude of secondary effects which have such great difficulty in perceiving, which we have such great difficulty in perceiving. In fact, it is only at the level of a lived Christianity that the medium really is the message. It is only at the level that the figure and ground meet. And that also applies to the Bible. We often speak of the content of Scripture, all while thinking that this content is the message. It is nothing of the sort. The content is everybody who reads the Bible. So in reading it, some people quote-unquote hear it, and others don't. All are users of the Word of God. All are its content, but only a small number of them discern its true message. The words are not the message. The message is the effect on us, and that is conversion. In other words, if you read the Bible, how do you read it? Does it pass into your daily life? Only then do you get the message, that is the effect. Only in that moment do medium and message unite. All right, that is the end of that. Let me know what you guys think. I appreciate you for listening here. I'll be doing some more for Marshal McLuhan here. And thanks for listening, guys.